Rushing TDs. Jamar Gibbs this week joined 8 other times where a player had 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. This category is dominated by Jonathan Taylor, who's done it 4 times. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10s for Wednesday. My name's Ernie Jennings, and we are going to get started. Yesterday, sorry about this. I'm adjusting my camera. There we go. Get it a little higher. Fix my hair. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the standings. Then we'll look at some season stats, see how many of those we can do before we run out of time. But definitely look at the standings and the playoff scenarios. Man, some big changes happened too. Yeah, yesterday in the podcast, had to cover a lot of games. Took me almost an hour to do a podcast. I'm trying to keep them shorter than that, more like 30 minutes, something that is more reasonable, especially for if you want to watch it. It's a long time to watch for an hour. And if you're in a car, you're usually not traveling, say, to work or whatever. Doesn't usually take you an hour for most people anyway. So trying to keep it more around a half an hour. And we'll try to do that today. All right. And my podcast came out all right yesterday. No, I don't know. I still do not know what happened a couple of days ago. I did the same thing yesterday and everything was fine. So I just don't get it. It must have just been one of those computer glitches that happen on occasion. But again, we're going to start with the standings, and we'll start in the AFC East. Now, this hasn't really changed much. The New England Patriots were on a bye, and they are still in first place, 11-2 over the Buffalo Bills, who are 9-4. New England Patriots 10-game winning streak. That's like I had mentioned that last week when I was talking about the rankings, team rankings. It's tough to put up 10 games in a row. Now, in this division, interestingly enough, every team won. Buffalo Bills, they won their game over the Bengals, came back late in the fourth quarter with a couple interceptions to pull that game out over the Cincinnati Bengals. Miami Dolphins won again. They're now 6-7. They've won 4 in a row, trying to make a late push to, get in the playoffs. As a wild card team, possibly. It's going to be tough, but they win out. They go 10-7. It would be tough. They're going to need some help for sure, but it's nice to see, a 4-game winning streak by any team. Then the New York Jets, they also won. So they are 3-10 now. So every team won in this league. Well, New England Patriots were on a bye, but they had won the week before, so good week for this particular division. All right, let's look at the AFC North. Now, this one's just convoluted. And Cincinnati Bengals let that game against the Buffalo Bills get away. I mean, they were winning until halfway through the fourth quarter. Buffalo scores, and then immediately 2 plays in a row, Burrow throws an interception, return for a touchdown, then throws an interception on the next play, next time they have the ball as well. And that game's over. All of a sudden, the Bills win it. But Cincinnati, if they had won, they would have been within reach of Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the best Cincinnati's going to do is 8-9. That's not to say that the Steelers and the Ravens can't go 8-9 as well, but it really is pretty much out of their hands now. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Ravens, so they're 7-6 to 6-7 for the Ravens. Still a couple of division games to go. And Baltimore and the Pittsburgh play the last game of the year, too. So that could potentially be for the division title. We'll have to see. But this division, only one team's going to the playoffs. Whoever comes in first, whoever wins the division, because, I mean, it's looking very much like the winner of this division could even go 9-8. So not the best division this year at all. That's the AFC North. And Cleveland Browns, they're 3-10. So got 3-10 Browns, 4-9 Bengals, 6-7 Ravens, and the 7-6 Steelers. Now, looking at the AFC South, well, the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Indianapolis Colts last Sunday. They both were at 8-4. Now the Jaguars are 9-4, 3-1 in the division. A couple of games left still for them, but they're both. I mean, they got Tennessee and Indianapolis left at Indianapolis. Now the Houston Texans, by winning, beating the Chiefs, moved up to second. They're 8-5, and the Indianapolis Colts are 8-5. Now the problem for the Colts is they dropped to third. They dropped out of the playoffs. Going from 2 weeks ago, they were in first. 3 weeks ago, they had this division tightened up pretty well. They were up by two to three games, a month ago. Now they're in second. They're in third place, not even in the playoffs. And unfortunately for them, Daniel Jones is out for the season. And they have the toughest schedule, pretty much, at Seattle, play San Francisco, Jacksonville, at Houston, and they don't have their quarterback. It's going to be rough. They could end up actually losing every game and going and having a losing record after being 7-1. Man, what a turnaround. And in the meantime, the Houston Texans are 8-5. They've won 5 in a row, while the Colts have lost 3 in a row, and the Jaguars have won 4 in a row, which is why those two teams are now in the top, and they're both in the playoffs. The Houston Texans are the 7th seed right now. We'll look at that a bit, but this is a division that no one thought would be this way. So now you've got two teams in the South, which I would have not said would happen, that would make the playoffs if they were to start today, that being the Jaguars and the Texans. And then Tennessee actually won a game, and they're 2-11 now. Probably a mistake to win a game, but you play like you want to win, but as a fan, you're thinking about the draft more than you're thinking about a win at 2-11. All right, AFC West. Denver Broncos 11-2, 10-game winning streak. And interestingly, they have to keep up this type of pace because the Chargers are 9-4, 2 games back, and they play each other at the end of the season. So if the Chargers could get within a game, they have a chance to overtake the Broncos, incredibly as it may sound. Because right now, the Chargers are 4-0 in the division, and the Broncos are 3-1. And so if the Chargers win out and tie the Broncos and end up 6-0 in the division, they would overtake the Broncos. So it's very close. And the Kansas City Chiefs losing that game to Houston cost them the division for sure, which they were pretty much out of anyway. But now at 6-7, it's impossible for them to win the division. The best they can do is make the playoffs at 10-7, and that's going to be tight because every team, even the wild card teams, are 9-4 right now. So, they're going to have to hope that one of these wild card teams, whether currently it's the Chargers, Bills, and Texans, one of them's got to lose a couple of games and end up no better than 9-7, so that the Chiefs have an option. But the bad thing for the Chiefs is they've lost to the Jaguars, who are ahead of them. They lost to the Chargers, who's ahead of them, and they lost to the Texans as well, and the Bills. So everybody in front of them has beat them. So if they tie, it could make it difficult for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think they could be out of this. Their chances are slim. We'll look at that later. And then the Las Vegas Raiders are at 2-11. They bring up the bottom. They've lost 7 games in a row. Everything's just going wrong for them. And it's primarily offensive line, just no offensive line. They haven't even scored 200 points so far this whole entire season. Now moving over to the NFC. You got the Philadelphia Eagles at 8-5, who lost 3 in a row, and they're still winning this division by a game and a half over the Dallas Cowboys. So it's allowing, even though the Cowboys lost last week, it's keeping them in this with a chance to win. The Washington Commanders are 3-10. They've lost 8 in a row. And then the New York Giants are 2-11. They've lost 7 in a row. This division, every team lost. Just horrible. Now the Giants were on a bye, but still, every team has lost their last game they played. Not going well in this particular division. You got a 3-game losing streak, a 7-game losing streak, and an 8-game losing streak in the NFC East. So that's why the Philadelphia Eagles, despite losing 3 in a row, are still in a commanding lead in first place in the NFC East. Now, looking at the NFC North, this has been such a topsy-turvy division. And it's amazing to see this division and what's happening here. The Chicago Bears were in first place. They played Green Bay. They lost. So now Green Bay Packers 9-3-1 are in first place. They're on a 4-game winning streak. Chicago Bears losing dropped to 9-4. Detroit Lions won, so they're back up to 8-5. And then the Minnesota Vikings, who did win, but they're now at 5-8. What a division. And it just keeps changing. Green Bay, by winning, now in the division lead, they're number 2 in the playoff standings. And the Chicago Bears dropped down from first to first in the playoff standings. They were. Now they're 7th. They're the 7th team, so they're the 3rd wild card team right now. What a drop. It just shows you they cannot afford to lose. Nobody in this division can afford to really lose. The Lions right now are the team right outside looking in the playoffs. They're the next team in line. And they've got some tough games. All these teams do. And we'll look at that in a minute. But, man, it's going to be rough to see who can come out of this alive by the end of the season. I don't know. And we'll look at their schedules when we look at the playoff scenarios. But you got Green Bay Packers in first, 9-3-1. Chicago Bears second, 9-4. Detroit Lions 8-5 in third. And Minnesota Vikings are in fourth at 5-8. Now, the Green Bay Packers at 9-3-1 have a distinct advantage because they're also 4-0 in the division. So that could end up helping them as well. Now, in the NFC South, wow, this division, Tampa Bay Buccaneers the wheels have fallen off. They look bad. Now, they are getting back Evans. Probably they play Thursday night too. But they're playing Atlanta, so it's a chance that they could win that game and try to get back and stay in the lead. But right now, they're winning the division at 7-6. Carolina Panthers, who were on a bye, are 7-6 as well. So they're tied. It's tight there, and it's going to be decided by them because they still play each other 2 times. Now for the Buccaneers, 3 of their 4 games left are in the division, and so that really will determine who wins this division. The same goes for the Carolina Panthers. They play the Saints, and then they play the Buccaneers twice. So it's going to come down to the wire for these 2 teams between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. And as I said more than once, I would have never thought the Carolina Panthers would be in this at all. But they are. Good for them. So you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers are 7-6. Atlanta Falcons are 4-9 on a 2-game losing streak. And then the New Orleans Saints won their game, and they're over the Buccaneers, and they're now 3-10. And our last division, NFC West. And this is now, unlike the last one, where everybody's no better than 7-6, this division, you got the Rams in first at 10-3. Seattle Seahawks are in second at 10-3. San Francisco 49ers are in third at 9-4. And the Arizona Cardinals come up the bottom at 3-10. Cardinals have lost 5 in a row, while the Seahawks and the 49ers have won 3 in a row. And the Rams, after that loss to Carolina, came back and just stomped Arizona 45-17, something like that. It was just a beating. They've won their last game, so they're 10-3 and in first place. And they're 3-1 in the division. Seahawks are 2-2, and the San Francisco 49ers are 4-1. So they're just lingering right there. All three of these teams are in the playoffs right now. That's how good the NFC West is. That's going to be fun to watch. I mean, with only a game separating first and third, they make it tough just to figure out. I mean, the Rams, to me, look the best, but we'll see what happens, as we go along. All right, that is a look at the divisions. Some really fascinating things happening. Now, let's take a look at the playoffs. Right now in the AFC, the Broncos are the number 1 seed. Patriots are number 2. The Jaguars are number 3. The Steelers are number 4 based on the fact that they're winning their division. And then the Chargers at 9-4 are 5th. Bills 9-4 are at 6th. And the Texans at 8-5 are 7th. Really, the Broncos have a pretty good rap, possibly, on being the number 1 seed. In fact, I actually think the Patriots have maybe a better shot at it, because right now the Broncos, if they win out, they'll be the number 1 seed. But the Broncos play Green Bay this week, play Jacksonville next week, Kansas City after that, and the Los Angeles Chargers after that. They have 4 tough games. There's no way. I mean, I'm just saying right now, there's no way they win all 4 of those games. If they do, they deserve number 1. That's 3 playoff teams and 1 team that was in the Super Bowl last year, versus the Patriots, who play Buffalo, which is a good team, but then they play at Baltimore, a losing record, at New York Jets, a losing record, and at Miami, a losing record. Patriots have by far an easier path to the number 1 seed. But between those 2 teams, one of them is probably going to be the number 1 seed. The Jaguars have an outside shot at it, 10% chance, but they basically have to win out and expect both the Broncos and Patriots to lose 2 games at least. And, I could see the Broncos doing it. I'm not sure the Patriots do it. And so, but still, those two teams pretty much have locked up a playoff spot. I mean, if they both lose out, they're still 11-6 with, so, I mean, I guess they could be out of it. The best the Texans are going to be, well, they could be 12-5, I guess. So not quite that far yet for either team, but they're very close, the Broncos and Patriots, to being in the playoffs regardless. And even if they lose right now, their percentage odds of being in the playoffs are still at better than 99%. So good for them. Now, with the change, like I was talking about, the Colts, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, they were the number 1 seed. Then they dropped to being the number 3 seed or so as leading the AFC South. And then with this loss to the Jaguars, not only did they drop from out of that spot and they're out of the playoffs completely at this point in time. Right now, every team has a chance to be in the playoffs has a pretty good chance to stay there, even if they lose. Even the Texans at 8-5, if they lose, they still have a 75% chance to make the playoffs. So it's pretty good odds. Unlike the Colts, Ravens, or Chiefs. The Chiefs' chances of making the playoffs, even if they win, are only at 16%. They basically have to win out and expect a lot to happen. Now, the Ravens, obviously, with them having to play Pittsburgh, still have a chance to win their division. That's the only way I think they'll make it. And then the Colts, that's just rough. If they win, they still have a 58% chance to make the playoffs, so better than 50-50. But the Colts have an incredible, talk about a tough schedule, at Seattle. Then they play San Francisco. Then they play Jacksonville. And then they're at Houston. That's their next 4 games, their last 4 games. Not easy. Versus somebody like the Chiefs. They play the Chargers. That's a tough game. But then they play at Tennessee. Then they have Denver. And then they're at Las Vegas. So 2 of those 4 games they should win. And I expect possibly they beat either the Chargers or Denver. I don't see them winning out. Not the way they've played so far this season. So, it's almost set. It's pretty close in the AFC that the playoff teams are set. And especially if they all win this week, it's going to make it difficult for any of the bubble teams to make the playoffs. Now, looking at the NFC, we got the Rams at number 1, Packers are at number 2, Eagles number 3, Buccaneers number 4, and then you've got the Seahawks 5, 49ers 6, and the Bears are at 7th. And like I said, you've got 3 teams, the Rams, the Seahawks, and 49ers from the same division, NFC West. So really representing in the playoffs. And then you've got also the Packers and the Bears from their division, and the Lions right on the bubble. Pretty interesting. Something's going to have to give, because obviously the Eagles and the Buccaneers are from their division. Somebody's going to show up from their division to make it difficult. But right now, there's only 2 teams on the bubble that are even worth mentioning. One's the Lions, who, if they win this week, their chances of making the playoffs are at 72%. So it really is up there. And they're playing the Rams, though. Man, that's a tough game. Playing the best team in the NFL. So the Lions' schedule is the Rams, then the Pittsburgh, at Minnesota, at Chicago. That Chicago game could definitely be a playoff game. One of those teams could be vying to be in the playoffs. The Bears dropped from number 1 seed to 7th in the playoff standings. They lose again. They're playing Cleveland. They probably won't lose that game. But then they have Green Bay, at San Francisco, and Detroit. So their last 3 games are tough. They could end up this season at 10-7 and miss the playoffs. It's going to be close. The 49ers, on the other hand, they're the 6th seed. They play Tennessee at Indianapolis, which would have been a tough game if Jones had been there. But now that he's not, it should be a win. Then they play Chicago. That's at home. And they play Seattle. They have 3 home games, and the 1 game away is Indianapolis. So the 49ers have a chance to, let's say they win at least 3. They could go 12-5. So there's nothing that says that right now, even though the Rams are number 1, that they're in. The odds for these teams in the top 7 to make the playoffs are nowhere near as good as they are in the AFC. It's a much more wide open race with so many good teams in the division. When you've got 2 divisions with 3 teams vying for the playoffs, it just makes it difficult to figure out who's going to end up winning overall. So right now, the Rams are the best team, but Seattle Seahawks are also, even though they're a wild card team, they're 10-3 as well. So the Rams, if they win, they're in the playoffs. That's that simple. They got 100% chance, it says, to make the playoffs if they win. All right. Must be all the they'd be 11 and the worst they would be is 11-6. Wow. I guess with all the different scenarios. Same with the Seahawks and the Packers. If they win, they're at 99% chance to make the playoffs. So basically a win guarantees them to get in. The Rams, even if they lose, there's still a 95% chance that they make it. The Rams' schedule is Detroit, tough game, at Seattle, another tough game, but then they wrap up their season at Atlanta, and then they play Arizona. So really, their games left are not that difficult. All right, so we got some good matches going up here and some good games. We'll look at that when we look at the top 10 teams. We'll look at some matchups. What's some good matchups coming into this weekend? All right, let's switch gears here and look at a little bit of the season leaders so far this season. And we're just looking at game ones here today. those players that made some kind of an impact this week. And as far as passing yards, the only player in the NFL last week to make it into the top 10 this season as far as a game performance was Dak Prescott when he threw for 376 yards in a loss, though. That was the 9th best passing yardage game so far this season. Joe Flacco, believe it or not, for the Bengals, still has the highest and probably might stay there. 470 yards he had in a loss. That was way back in week 9. That's the best game so far. We've had 5 times the players thrown for over 400 yards this season. And on this list of top 10 players, only Matthew Stafford's on it twice. He had 375 yards in week 4, 389 yards in week 5. Only player on here twice. All right, looking at another stat, and that's interceptions. Well, Jalen Hurts had just a unbelievably bad game, and they still came close to winning that game. But Jalen Hurts had 4 interceptions, which tied the highest number with Sam Darnold and Max Brosmer for the Vikings and Darnold for the Seahawks. Only 3 players to throw 4 interceptions in a game so far this season. 11 times a quarterback has thrown 3. So Jalen Hurts joined that negative category. And then another negative for the quarterbacks. Justin Herbert was sacked 7 times last week in a loss. Every team up here, except for Daniel Jones, was sacked 7 times in week 10, but the Colts still ended up winning that game. Geno Smith leads this category in week 12. Oh, that was the week on Thursday night. Josh Allen was sacked 8 times in a loss. And then on Sunday, Geno Smith was sacked 10 times for a loss as well. And that was both games in week 12. So now here's Justin Herbert last week getting sacked 7 times for the Chargers. All right. Let me look at that real quick. Was that in a loss though? Week 14? That's what I'm thinking. Let me check it out real fast. Where is that? Oh no, they won. Chargers actually won that game. That was the game with the Eagles, 22-19. I guess even though he sacked 7 times, at the same time, Hurts was throwing 4 interceptions and fumbling. That was a crazy play in that game when he threw an interception. The guy who intercepted it was running. He lost it. He fumbled it. Then Hurts picked it up, and then he fumbled it. And then the team that intercepted it actually got it back. What a crazy play that was. All right. Now let's look at some rushing leaders here. Rushing TDs. Jahmyr Gibbs this week joined 8 other times where a player had 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. This category is dominated by Jonathan Taylor, who's done it 4 times. No one else has done it more than once, but Jahmyr Gibbs joins that list. 8 times that it's happened so far this season. 3 touchdowns in a single game. And then in quarterback rushing yards, a couple of big games here. Justin Herbert last week in that game, in that win. What a game that was. Went into overtime and everything. Both quarterbacks were gutting it out. Herbert running around had 66 rushing yards, which was good enough to time for 6th best this season so far by a quarterback. But he's running with a broken hand. Really, wow. Just every time you're thinking, oh man, somebody's gonna hit that hand, and he's done. And then Josh Allen in their comeback win. I already talked about this, but he had 78 yards in their win in week 14. But Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, you're talking about Josh Allen. They've got their back to him. He's running all over the field, and it's like, what are you doing? Why are you not paying attention to Josh Allen? Of all people, you don't have to double team a single player, wide receiver or anybody for the Buffalo Bills. You just focus on Josh Allen. That's what you needed to do, and they didn't do it. So he was just able in the second half just to pass and run anywhere he wanted to. He ended up with 78 rushing yards to be one of those top 10 games as far as quarterback rushing yards so far this season. 2 of them, in fact, with Justin Herbert being the other one. All right, we'll wrap it up right there. Those are a look at some of the top numbers this season as far as games go. Tomorrow, we'll look at some of the season leaders overall. Got some moves happening. Still have some of the same numbers for some players still at the top of their game, but some other players moving up on them. All right, appreciate you listening. That's a look at what we had today. Man, these games, with only 4 games left in the NFL season before we hit the playoffs, we've got some tight races in some divisions. Every division, even the Eagles, could end up losing their division, especially the way they're playing. And despite the fact that they have a little bit of a lead, unlike some other divisions, but they're very tight. And so every game as we go out are important. It's really fun to watch. So we do have a game tomorrow night, big game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, try to get on track. We'll talk about that game. We'll probably mention it tomorrow, but we'll definitely talk about it on Friday. So please like and subscribe to this podcast. You can find it on YouTube, the video with the charts that I'll post on all the division leaders, the standings, the playoff scenarios, all that will be posted up on the video if you watch it on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. Also, you can, of course, listen to this podcast on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or whatever app you might use. Please subscribe, and please comment if you got a comment, and I'll try to answer it as soon as I see it. So that is a wrap for Just the Stats NFL Top 10s for Wednesday. So until tomorrow, I'm out.